Hey, what's up guys? In this video, my coaching tip of the week is about how to build legacy. So I've done a lot of podcast episodes and I've asked people offline, what's your big why? And it seems like a lot of people say legacy is one of their big whys. And so I wanted to calculate what would you have to do to have a positive impact on generations to come. Maybe that money is, for your family, your great-great-grandkids or grandkids, etc. Maybe it's for a fund, for example, and a trust for the purposes of a nonprofit or something like that. But it's like, how can you build up a fund that is like huge? And so in my head, well, what's a big fund? And like, what's a really large amount of money that could have a big impact? And of course, I was thinking like, well, it's gotta be north of $1 billion. If you could create a fund that's north of $1 billion and do that without having to put up $1 billion, that'd be pretty amazing. So there's probably a lot of people watching this video right now, and the idea of like having, building a trust or a fund or something like that with over $1 billion probably doesn't sound super practical right now. But what if there were really like tiny little things you could be doing right now to like literally make the probability of you having a fund north of $1 billion, which you could use to give to charity, help out future generations within your family, and leave a legacy. You won't be alive to fully realize this legacy, but that's the whole point of legacy. It's something that goes way beyond you, and it's something selfless, right? It's something that you're doing for others. And so I started doing some calculations for the purposes of this video, and I wanted to think like, what could I do to like help out my kids, like 3 generations deep? Like, how could I have a positive impact? And so specific to family, I started thinking like, one, like how much do I have to contribute to have something worth well over $1 billion that could be dispersed to people within my family, like my kids. And lastly, when you start thinking about having a trust fund for kids or whatever, like you don't want them to feel entitled, and you want to make sure they work hard and they pursue their passions. And so I had to think about like, what's my general philosophy on giving my kids money, and to be honest, my personal perspective is that I think it's important to set your kids up for success on the education side. So anything regarding like helping them financially to help further their education, I think is a big plus. And then the secondary thing is, I think when you retire, your ability to earn income, not so much a function of retiring per se, but more a function of your age. Your ability to earn money at a certain point in your life diminishes because you're just not in a good a place, health-wise. So, I said, okay, well, if I'm gonna set my kids and my like kids up for success, and I'm gonna give them money, then I'm gonna decide to only help them on that education front, and then have a nest egg developed for them when they turn 65, because like they're not gonna be able to earn a lot of money between 65 and 80, and if they do, it's limited in what they can earn because of health-related issues that start popping up at that age. And so, if like I also communicated to them like, hey, there's something set up for you when you turn 65 as kind of a fallback. It'll help them pursue something that's like more of a passion for them versus like going after a career that's all about the money. So I started drawing out on this whiteboard, which I know it's really hard to see in this video. I started drawing out like, what would I need to do to have an impact on my kids? Like, what's the immediate thing I need to do? What's the thing I need to do to have an impact on my grandkids? And what do I need to be doing financially to allocate funds to set up my great grandkids? So 3 generations deep. I think we can all agree that is building legacy when you can have an impact on multiple generations to come. So I wanted to share with you my calculations, okay? So right now I currently have 2 kids, Eva and Stella. We might be having a third. And so I started thinking about, again, how do I set them up for education and then retirement? So if I were to W-2 salary my kids and make them models per se, in my business, and they received a salary of $12,000 a year between now and when they turned 18 years old, and it compounded at 8% interest, which is pretty conservative. Between now and when they turn 18, that fund, if you will be equivalent to $500,000 per kid. So if you give your kids $1,000 a month, put it in like a trust, or something you could also look at is what's called a Utah 529, which is a way to reduce tax, some of your tax liabilities. So you can put the money in a Utah 529, and then also do a W-2 like $1,000 a month or 12 grand a year, salary to your kids. Like these two things will help reduce tax liability. If you do that, you could set up for your kids a fund when they turn 18 at 18 grand a year that would be worth $500,000 when they turn 18. So again, 12 grand a year, W-2 them, make them models, put them in your videos and in your marketing. By the time they turn 18, it's worth $500,000. Now, in that trust, you could stipulate that they can't touch the money until they turn 65 years old. Guess how much money that is worth if you don't put another dollar in that account after they turn 18? Well, it comes out to a total of $18 million per kid when they turn 65. That is one hell of a backup plan from a financial perspective for your kids if you want to look out for them when they get older. Now, if you do the college savings contribution through what's called a Utah 529, you're allowed to put in, I think it's like $400 to $500 a month. And by the time they turn 18, that would be worth $150,000, which would be plenty to help cover their education. So these are the two strategies to have a huge positive impact on your kids, like the first generation, the W-2 thing, and then the Utah 529. Now, the second generation, so basically your grandkids, if you wanted to have a positive impact on them, and let's say you have 3 kids, and each of those kids you expect to have 3 kids. That means you're going to have 9 grandkids. So if today you deposited $10,000 in a trust for each kid that's not even born yet, like they won't be born for probably 35 years or whenever your kids decide to start having kids. If you deposit $10,000 now in this fund, and you don't put any more money in it, but you put 10 grand per kid, assuming there's going to be 9 grandkids, and don't put any more money in it, like not a dollar more, and you stipulate in that fund that your grandkids can't get access to those funds until they turn 65. Guess how much money it is worth when they retire at 65? Just putting in $10,000 now per grandkid and never putting another dollar in. Guess how much money it's worth when they retire, assuming they retire at 65. The grand total is $90 million. So that's $10 million. $10 million per grandkid if you put $10,000 in today into a fund. Never touch it again. Never, add anything additional, and you just take advantage of one of the greatest wonders of the world, compound interest at 8% interest compound over the course of time until they retire. $10,000 now, when they retire in 65 years, would be valued at $10 million. That's freaking amazing. So that's how you could have an impact on the second generation, your grandkids. Now your great grandkids, this is generation 3. This is really wild what I'm about to share with you. What I'm about to share with you is like a bulletproof way to have like a nest egg developed for your great grandkids, generation 3. Have a nest egg of over $2 billion. $2 billion. Like guaranteed way to make it happen. Like if this isn't building legacy, I don't know what is. By the way, when I started off this video, I said like this is an example with like your family. You could also do this with like organizations that you support from a charitable perspective. Okay, so Gen 3, your great grandkids, if you put $10,000 in today, $10,000 today, and stipulate that your great grandkids can't touch this money until they retire, When your great grandkids retire, there will be $100 million waiting per grandkid. $100 million per grandkid. So you're probably wondering, how did I get to that number of north of 2 billion? And so what I assumed is my grandkids, there will be 9 of them if my kids have 3 kids each. And so if my grandkids each have 3 kids, that's 9 times 3, so 27 great grandkids that hopefully, hypothetically I'll meet in my lifetime. 27 great grandkids, and you do $10,000 in a fund per great grandkid. That fund at the age when they turn 65 will be worth $2.7 billion. 2.7 billion, assuming 27 great grandkids, and putting in an account right now $10,000 per great grandkid. That is pretty remarkable. You guys are probably wondering, how do I figure out timelines when I was thinking about this? So first off, my kids are pretty young. They're 1 and 3 years old. So in the year 20, let's see, I assumed in the year 2038, my kids would graduate high school. That's when the Utah 529 college savings thing would kick in. And that's when the W-2 $12,000 a year, I would stop contributing. That's how I got to those numbers earlier. I assumed that my grandkids would be born around the year 2045. And I calculated that my great grandkids would be born in the year 2075. So that's kind of like the birth dates that I assumed. Basically assuming like everybody has kids like in their mid to late 20s. And then on the retirement side, I calculated basically the first generation, my kids, they would retire in the year 2085. So in the year 2085, my kids now would retire at 65 years old. And hopefully I'm still alive to see them when they retire. And then my grandkids, my kids, if they had kids, they would retire in the year 2110. So 2110 is when generation 2 would retire, and then generation 3, my great grandkids, they would retire in the year 2140. So all of these funds would be teed up and be ready to help them for, as a lifeline, if you will, for future generations to come. So I hope this video is helpful. This is, I think, a really cool way to think about the power of compounding interest and how you can make, tiny little decisions with your money and how you allocate money and save money and set it aside for future generations and have a really, massive impact. Yeah, and then, you could write in the trust documents, like these future generations, in order to get access to the money, they have to do the same thing for generations to come. So like, they're gonna have to put money into an account. Like, you could stipulate stuff like that, so it just is this revolving thing. And then again, if it's not your family or your kids, it could be charitable organizations. So anyways, I hope this was a cool exercise. Thanks for tuning in to my coaching tip of the week on building legacy, and check back next week in our coaching corner of our YouTube channel. And don't forget, hit that subscribe channel for more coaching tips around real estate, building legacy, entrepreneurship, and beyond.